Welcome, everybody, to the next episode and podcast from analysis.tech. And today we have got a great lineup. We're going to be talking everything, everywhere about AI. And our guest today is going to be Angela Stewart. And she'll need no introduction for those that have been following her on her amazing Substack. And every day there's something she's posting about AI and not just her enthusiasm and passion for it, but obviously a depth of expertise that she's picking up in the field. So amazing. So I'm going to let Angela introduce yourself and your role, and we're excited to have you with us today. So thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm equally excited to be here. So, Angela Stewart, I'm the vice president of a large stock exchange here based in the United States. My role at the organization is really sales enablement, go to market, motion, supporting the technology tools around that. There are some legal operations, some several service applications that I'm responsible for. For the most part, most of the internal applications that our sales teams and our go-to-market functions, revenue operations teams use, I'm responsible for supporting.
Awesome. And so listen, I didn't introduce our co-host, John Reimer. So these things are live, so it is tough. It's one of those things. So John, introduce yourself and welcome.
Who is that guy?
Who's that
Hi,
guy?
I'm John Reimer, uh, a partner here at analysis.tech. Angela, welcome to Lowdown on Low Code. It's such a pleasure to have you here to share your experiences with us. Um, just folks, we're here about every week on Lowdown on Low Code. If you find these conversations helpful, useful, fun, we hope. Hit the like button, subscribe on YouTube. We're also on all the popular podcast channels, and tell your friends and neighbors about Lowdown on Low Code. So, Francis, back over to you.
Yeah, great. I think the thing, Angela, that we wanted to extract from you, like I said at the beginning in the opening, you're passionate about AI, and I know that we've had dinner before and discussed low code and no code, which is what we all at analysis.tech are here to discuss. And when AI, let's just say when AI came along a few years ago, we all know it was way before a few years ago, but what has happened in the last 18 and 24 months has been absolutely mind-blowing. Whether you're following that through Nvidia share price or if you're following that through the number of companies that have got something AI attached to them, it's pretty incredible. And as I said, you've been writing a lot about this every single day in every direction where AI impacts business, and from every element of business. And for us, it's AI within the actual development and runtime environments of enterprise applications. But you know, like here at analysis.tech, you have that same passion. So what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that drives you to have picked up on this AI and make it really such a big part of what you do and say to the world?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, Francis, I've been using AI for a long time before it was cool, right? But with the introduction of ChatGPT and some of the Gen AI tools, it has just completely exploded. And having been in technology my entire career, for the first time ever, I'm able to give these tools to business users or to the novice person who really just kind of has an idea, and you can say, well, hey, click, click, click. It's so intuitive. They use this tool and now they have an application. The power of that is just, I think it's called vibe coding now. You can't even keep up with the stuff, but you have an idea, you're kind of vibing, and the next thing you know, you have a prototype. That would have taken a development team 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even. You'd have to hire people to do it, but now you can at least get 80% of the way there. And for an enterprise, that's truly phenomenal because you pick a few power users in the organization and IT is no longer that bottleneck, right? Now they can actually show you a Loom video or show you some kind of lovable prototype. And then they get it 80% of the way there, hand it over to a technology team, and now you have a full blown application in half of the time or less. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah.
Because I think that that is really what we're all seeing in this world. But what do you have any particular use cases that might be your successes or things that you can speak about that you're actually proud of? I'm sure you're proud of all of them, but are there any that stand out for you?
Um, I could talk about it all day. I'll just pick a few, right? I get all kinds of emails and DMs all the time. As you both mentioned, I blog every single every single day because I'm reading constantly. I'm always curious, and then something always like sparks my imagination or piques my interest, and I'm like, oh, I have to tell the world about it. So what's interesting is I got a note maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and I met the founder of an organization that literally said, I follow your blog. I've been following it for a couple of months now. I've built the application, the thing that you said you could use Zapier and ChatGPT, et cetera, to build for sales enablement. I actually built it, and I'm building a company around it, right? Which
Huh.
honestly, check, goal accomplished, right? So
Yeah, good.
now some of this innovation, right, that's kind of living in my head that I feel like I have to get out through blogging, people are running with it. And I think there's something here. I can actually build, I can go get funding to do it. And that makes me very proud. So that's just one example. Other examples include just even within the enterprise, right? You think about tools like Jira and Rally and kind of that whole software development lifecycle process that you have to go through to, get something in a logical way to a development team, from a business analyst to a development team to get it actually deployed. And for those of you that I'm sure both John and Francis, you've seen a user story before. It can be one sentence, it could be 4 paragraphs, and it can be and it takes maybe a small rocket scientist team to even understand it half of the time, depending on who's writing it. We were able to, through prompt engineering, actually create a format. So kind of like ChatGPT, any user in the organization can say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Wouldn't it be great? It could be ideation, right? They're back and forth with, and it's not really chat GPT for us because we're financially, financial services, fintech, locked down. So we have our own version of the large language model, but there's ideation. And, oh, wouldn't it be great if I had a dashboard that could do this? So that ideation process can go on with any user in the organization for some time. And then when it's finally at a point where you're like, you know what? I want to add this to the backlog. We have an agent that's always monitoring this, saying, are you done? Would you like to add this to the backlog? And not only, and they click yes, of course, and not only does it add that idea to the backlog, but it's in a perfectly formatted user story with perfect acceptance criteria, prepped for test cases being developed, etc. That process alone, with the grooming and the back and forth, can sometimes take weeks, maybe months even,
Wow.
right? But
Yeah.
because we were able to
Wow.
add that ideation piece, we're actually getting perfect user stories. So our developers can hopefully just wait for the prioritization, which is next, by the way. How do we
Wow.
prioritize this? Let's use some kind of
That's
AI to
very
do it,
cool.
but we run with it. Yeah. Yeah,
That
that's
is
something
very cool,
recently.
Angela.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's my
Angela,
team.
let's
I have
take
an
us.
amazing team. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, sounds like you're an amazing leader. So fortunate for
Thank
that.
you.
Let's take a step back and tell us a little bit about we. Francis and I know you a little bit about your background, but let's tell the audience a little bit about how you got to this point. Because you did not come out of a comp sci program, right? You're a business person, first and foremost, is what I recall. Talk a little
Kind
bit about how
of.
your
I
journey,
started.
how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did start comp sci, right, for
Oh,
undergrad, and
okay.
realized that well, and I hated it. Right? And so I had again, I had tons of solutions. I had tons of ideas, but the actual getting it from my head to a working thing was frustrating at times, right? And so I do have that background, but then I quickly, when I got my MBA, and zoomed in on the business side, right? I gravitated to the business users because now I had the superpower. I could have business conversations, and I could actually understand enough about the technology and the code, et cetera, that I became kind of let's call it the developer whisperer, right? So I was in the middle. I could take some vague concept and say, oh, what they really mean is, your tech stack needs to have this kind of data lake on the bottom or whatever, right? So I was that translator. And so I've lived in that space for a really long time, and it's allowed me to morph into digital transformation, right? Because I know I've managed development teams, I've managed architects, I still do. And so I know what they need to get their job done. And most of them have no interest in understanding the business value, right? But I'm always looking at things from that business value. I was a consultant for most of my career. So that digital transformation kind of morphed into consulting, which I really loved because you're not just solving problems for one company. Now you can kind of take data points from 10 or 12 or hundreds of different companies and have enough data points to formulate a conclusion, right? And so that's kind of the space that I live in now. I was an entrepreneur for 13 years. And then when COVID hit, I decided to go back to corporate America, kids in private school. Like, let's, let me rethink that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Real
But
life.
here I am in corporate America. Yeah, the real life stuff, right outside of AI. Right? And so I went back into corporate America, which I really don't have any regrets because I'm in an organization. If you're, in my opinion, if you're in a fast-paced organization in which, especially with AI, let's try this innovation here. How can we optimize? We need a digital transformation, which is quite frankly how the company that I'm at now bought me in. They're like, we need to revamp our sales processes. Angela, this is what you do. Can you come in and help? I feel like an entrepreneur still, right? So
Right.
anyway,
I think that's
kind
what's happened to this industry. I'm sorry, Angela, but I think you raise a point that we typically don't cover a lot on, John, which is this idea from ideation to creation and runtime experimentation. Even, everything was like, we can't do that. It takes too long. If you the last 40 years, right? It's like you build something, it's too late, it's done. You want it changed, it's too hard, and stuff stuck around for 20, 30, 40 years. Actually, the key part of this is just the breadth of what you can do in such a short amount of time, even if it's experimentation. So you can say, this idea actually works. Now let's do it. And I think that's been unknown in this industry. And that's what a lot of people overlook about AI.
Well, it
of
plays into the one of the key themes that we have explored in the lowdown on low code is citizen development, is
Yeah.
business people self-serving. To your point, Angela, I've got an idea about how to improve sales. Actually, you seem to have an idea every 5 minutes about how to improve sales. So let me just build it. And it's not like it gets deployed, right? I mean, you have um, hoops you have to go through to get an idea
yeah,
deployed. But it seems like you're smack in the middle of this citizen development phenomenon, um, and are really it's the result is big contributions to your employer. I don't know if you remember, Angela. I think the first time we talked, you told a story about how it snowed in Atlanta and you couldn't play
yes.
tennis. Could you
Uh,
tell the audience that story? I love that as a citizen development story.
yeah, what's interesting is that's one of the product came from that story, quite frankly. So I'll tell the story. So it rarely snows in Atlanta, and when it does, it shuts down, right? Some of you probably remember the snow apocalypse, right? When everybody was stranded on the road, like that's Atlanta snow. So I play tennis every chance I get. As a matter of fact, I might go play after this podcast. But um, when it snows, obviously we can't play tennis. And now pickleball, which that's a whole different story. I can't get into that. But so I had downtime, couldn't go outside, looked, kids were playing in the snow. And I'm like, well, let me do what every normal person would do, right? Let me go create an application. Let me go use some of these codes, these tools, these no code tools to create an application. And so kind of started thinking about what's the biggest, and that's where I start, quite frankly, before I even start with playing around with, Cursor or Replit or Lovable, some of these no code tools. I always kind of ideate with ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, like what's the biggest problem? Because now it's not just what can I get coded, it's what's the biggest problem. that exists for this industry or for this role or this persona, etc.
Mm,
And
mm,
one of the things that came up was just an administrative task, updating Salesforce, right? Updating the CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever. That's the number one complaint that you hear from salespeople. And
yep.
so I ended up stringing together, I think I've done this so many times, but through Zapier and just a dev instance of Salesforce. Anybody can download it, it's free. Um, what else did I use? I forget the exact tech stack, but basically, Gong was one of the tools, but you could, or Zoom transcription, I think is what I used for this one. But I had it listen to calls, pull all the information from Salesforce, and then at the end of the call, it would listen out for next steps. I'll get back to you, follow up, etc. And when it did think, it would automatically insert those records into Salesforce. So oftentimes
Mm,
salespeople are so engaged, right, that they're
right.
doing what they're supposed to do, right? They're building the report, etc. But this listener becomes this agent in the background that says, "Oh, I heard you say next steps. I heard you say follow up. I heard you promise this, that, and the other." And it actually inserts tasks into Salesforce. So at the end of it, the salesperson is basically they're proofreading as opposed to
Right.
doing the administrative updates inside of Salesforce.
The Salesforce like that? Because I can think sometimes I always say salespeople sometimes do everything but sell, and so now they've got all these actions from the call. Now they actually have to follow through. But maybe that's a conversation for another day.
Well,
Let's do
there
a
are companies there, right, that actually a business was created off of it. So I'm like, whoa, I need to do that more often
Yes.
and
Yep.
tools for salespeople to use.
let's do a quick commercial break. Again, folks, this is Lowdown on Low Code, a usually weekly podcast from analysis.tech. Um, uh, Follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We're on YouTube. You can subscribe. We're here just about every week. And analysis.tech is a group of industry folks, myself, ex-Forrester, Rob Koplowitz, ex-Forrester, Rick Greenwald, ex-Gartner, Francis Carden, the godfather of RPA, and Dave Marcus, industry veteran, ex of UiPath and Microsoft, etc. Look us up at analysis.tech if you're interested in learning more. Okay, Francis, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, so you touched on some things, Angela, which I think you're in a pretty highly regulated, let's just say that at least a business. And when we think about AI, I think a lot of people get scared, right? It's like, oh well, arguably it could be shut down. It's like, well, we can't just let it run rampant, so we're going to shut it down, right? And so, but I think we've seen that transition, and you've certainly seen that. So when you think about low code, citizen development, and AI in all this context, how do you both allow that experimentation to occur but actually turn it into something positive as opposed to it hitting that wall because it's like, well, we can't control it. I mean, I'm just curious as to how you got that because I think you've been very successful from that outset to where you are today.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. So in highly regulated industries, it's definitely more governance, and we don't want to stifle ideation, but at the same token, we have controls around what actually gets put into production, and I think that's the key, right? Um, Give people, let people develop POCs, let them ideate, let them run with, MVPs in sandboxes, right? And then I think, John, you mentioned this earlier, then go through all the hoops, right? The testing, the validation, the infosec, and all of that to make sure it's production ready. So a lot of what I describe and a lot of what I blog about is really I think again I think the term is like vibe coding now, but basically it's standing up the proof of concept, proving out that this solution actually works, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily enterprise ready. So when you look in the financial services industry or even the healthcare industry or some of these highly regulated industries, there are teams that have to get involved to make it production ready. Now again, it's that process alone, at least for us, could take months, right? Especially we have AI governance, we have an infosec team, et cetera. It could literally take up to 3 or 4 months, but we're talking about you're still shortening the life cycle, right? So it could have taken 2 years to develop plus those 6 months. Now it's taking a shorter time to develop it and get it production ready, right? So, and another thing is, I think before AI, if you built it, you were pretty much stuck with it, right? That POC became the bubblegum and scotch taped version of some production environment that lasted for 20 years just because it
And the
was
rise of
so
RPA.
expensive.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was so expensive to change it. So it's just like, oh, it's good enough. Just click here 4 times and then it works, right? But now with just the pace, I mean, it's so tough to keep up with just all the AI tools and just innovation that's out there. You could literally, it's truly agile, right? You could, once you get that foundation, that governance, that dashboard that's kind of monitoring things from a governance perspective, now you can push those enhancements daily if you wanted to, but definitely or on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
We're also seeing, before I hand off to you, John, but we're also seeing obviously a lot of vendors, and I'm sure you're involved in this a lot, where we're using AI to have our back as well. So if you think about all the things that can go wrong, we know what they are, but have they all been covered? But the more we teach our AI engines how to have our back, we can not only get it to look out for us, but actually look out for the things we might have typically overlooked in the past. Let's be honest. There's been many breaches in many of the best industries in the world, include some of those that own some of these products over the last many
Right.
decades. So it's not like, well, AI is going to make it any worse. I think AI is going to make it a lot better because it's going to watch out for us and even advise us where we should be watching, where we haven't even thought we should be watching. And I think that's what's exciting by this, going from that your what you were saying, from ideation to, I don't even like to call it proof of concept anymore, because this proof of concepts are so close to going into production, because if you've got all the
Proof
governance
of
around it.
value.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that out there because I'm
I
in
like
violent agreement with you.
I like MVP. That sounds really good. That sounds
Minimum
really
viable
cool.
product, I think, right, Angela?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like
Hey, hey,
a
and
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Angela. So, drilling into governance a little bit. So you've got a lot of personal experience with a whole variety of tools and delivering ideas as POCs or MVPs or whatever we want to call them. So you've learned a lot about AI and these tools. What are the risks that really concern you? And as because you've seen an individual can actually do quite a lot. But what are the things that you tell people, here's what you really got to be careful about?
Yep, I'm glad you asked that question. So it's two things, right? One is agent sprawl, right? When we talk about
Hmm.
citizen development, you really have to have a strategy. Do you just turn it on for everybody in the company, or how do you control that, right? How do you know, how do
Hmm.
you eliminate one agent from superseding or overriding another or conflicting, and what happens, right? So I wrote a blog about the kill switch, right? So it has to be some kind of, let's call it AI agent governance panel, if you will, that controls all of these agents or at least monitors all of these
Hmm.
agents. So it's one thing to federate all about, citizen development, but that it has to be within, certain controls. The second thing I would say is the tech debt, right? So when you're asking a piece of technology, an AI bot, to develop code for you, there are just certain human elements that will be missing from that code, right? And if your prompt is sometimes they're as good as your prompt, but if your prompt doesn't say, you know don't create loops, continual loops, or make sure you check that this system over here, make sure you bring in the, let's call it reference ID, etc., just certain things that you might know working in an environment, that that AI, that prompt, if it doesn't have it, it's just going to create the thing to do the job to be done. It's not
Mm.
going to think
Mm.
about the entire architecture. So I believe it was the CEO of JP Morgan Chase a couple of weeks ago put out an article that said he thinks the number one rising job is going to be teams that come in and fix the tech debt, right? So you
Mm.
can get the application built, right? But that testing role, those hoops that we talked about earlier, I think that area is going to grow significantly. And we call it human in the loop, but that those hoops will include that validation and that testing and looking for tech debt, et cetera, especially while those prompts are getting refined. But I think it's going to be whole teams that are responsible for just checking the AI code to make sure it fits well into their environment without breaking anything.
That's really interesting. You're preaching from Francis's hymnal there, Angela. Tech debt, right? Francis, even with something new, there's a risk
Well, I
of
think
creating a tech debt that just weighs you down.
we cannot do it anymore. I'm over anybody giving me the excuse that you have to create tech debt. And I think that's what I worry about AI generating code. I'm okay as long as AI also manages the code. There's a difference
Mm, mm.
because I grew up very much in this model. And Angela, when we had dinner that a few weeks back, we did discuss. I mean, there's a different definition I think some have about low code, no code. And so there's this idea that you can do things visually. You could argue building a PowerPoint, you're a citizen developer and that's no code. But what I talk about no code and no code is typically around that enterprise application that's competing with tech debt created with code. What we're seeing is an avalanche of AI being applied to these model application development platforms. So the citizen developers, like it was fast to develop apps with low code, no code before AI, but it's almost like getting 5 to 10 times faster when you apply AI to these model application development platforms, these AI low code platforms. And what we're seeing, it's just mind blowing. And I don't know if you've been following that as well, Angela, what's gone on in the last 6 months, but it is absolutely, I think it is going to be the death knell for tech debt. And the idea that we've got, 1,000 insurance companies, each with their own definition of what a claim might look like, that's going to disappear as well because 98% of a claim process is the same across all of them. So let's just all share in that wealth, let AI have our back and differentiate because we're a better insurance company looking after our clients. Back to the old days when you walked into a bank and you had a personal relationship with the manager. I think that's what we're going to see over the next 5 years and go back to those basics. It's not going to be about who built the best application in code. It's going to be about now back to who delivers the best experience.
Mhm, mhm.
Totally agree. And creativity. I think I wrote about this earlier this week. Um, I don't think capability is going to be the new moat, the new like desirable skill set. Is that creativity, right? So
Mm.
who can who can think about the best solution, who can reimagine, right? So oftentimes people are walking around just saying, hey, how can I add AI onto this group or onto this process or onto this application? It's a bolt on, it's an afterthought. But what AI really gives us the opportunity to do, and this is where the creativity comes in as the moat, is now that I have all of these tools, if I had to redesign this, if I had access to all of this, 5 years ago, 10 years ago when this was built, would our processes be different? Probably so. Let's reimagine that entire process, industry, even to your point about insurance. We have less limitations these days with the tools that we have.
That's fascinating. We completely agree with you on that, Angela. It suggests that the nature of work, the nature of people's jobs, will change. I mean, many people go in to their jobs and they follow what I call protocols. These are the policies. These are the processes. We've all been on phone calls where we've got an issue with a company and the person is telling us they can't help us. And, you realize, you understand they're just following a script. They're following a protocol and they can't do anything about it. But what you're saying, I think, suggests that at least some of the folks, anyway, in organizations are going to be expected to be creative and to really figure out how things could be done better. Do you see that?
100%. And let's call it, I mean, creativity is important, but let's call it AI ready. Every job I think that exists, you have to kind of think about, well, how can I 10x my productivity, which in order to do that for some people, it requires some bit of creativity, right? And human in the
Mhm.
loop. A new industry, I think, is going to crop up over the next couple of years, and everybody's job is going to look just a little bit different with this no code technology, citizen development, AI agents, MCP, right? Automatically detecting integrations and building it, right? This is
Mhm.
unheard. It was unheard of several years ago, several months ago for some of it.
And
Right.
the excuses are gone now. I think that that's really where we're doubling down. We love the term reimagination, that reimagining. That's something we've really bought into. That in the past, people just didn't bother with that creativity or reimagination because it's like, why? Because it's not going to get done. Now they're going to see it get done, and I do think that we're going to see that. It's exciting times. I mean, I envy people coming into this space today. I mean, I've been in it too
Yeah,
many years
it's very
to
exciting.
ponder, but it's really exciting times. Hey, John, do you want to wrap us up? Take us out?
Yes. Angela, thank you. We love your blogs. We love your
Thank you.
Substack. Same thing, but we follow and would rec and really, folks, recommend Angela's blogs every day. She's got something really interesting to
Definitely.
say and really inspire some good thinking. So congratulations and thank you, Angela, for that. I also
Thank
want to
you.
recommend Angela's book. It's called the RevOps AI Playbook: How to Transform Your Revenue Engine in Weeks, Not Months. Well, there's a low code message if you ever heard one. And it is available on Amazon. And Angela, I believe it's at a very low cost, isn't it?
Absolutely. I had sometimes I mark it down as low as free. I just want everybody to read it and be as passionate about this stuff, but it's at a very low cost on Amazon right now.
Yeah. So anyway, recommend Angela's book as well. Again, this is Lowdown on Low Code, the usually weekly podcast from analysis.tech. If you like us, subscribe, tell your friends and neighbors, tell your colleagues. We're
And your
here about
cat and
every
your
week.
dog.
And your cat and your dog. We're here about every week with great guests like Angela Stewart. And again, Angela, thanks so much
Thank
for
you,
sharing
Angela.
your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
I have to hit the stop button.